All right, after going through the Kafka architectural components, let's go ahead and spin up our own Kafka cluster locally, and we're going to use Docker and Docker Compose to do that. So if you're not familiar with the technology, please spend some time learning a little bit more about it before proceeding, okay? So the first thing I needed to do is to create a folder named infrastructure, and inside of it create two more folders, the multi-broker and the single broker. Inside of them, we're going to create our Docker Compose file. So create this Docker Compose YAML file. We're going to define our services. Let's first look into the single broker, which is a cluster with only one broker. First, we're going to spin up our Kafka service. And then you can see here the process rules are broker and controller. So that means that since we only have a single broker, this node will act as both the broker and the controller at the same time. All right. We have our cluster ID that is unique. So we need to keep it stable because if you're closing the container and spinning up again, you need to have this ID stable. So whenever you restart the cluster, it knows what metadata or information belongs to what. Okay. On the listeners, we have three listeners here. One on 1992, the other one on 1993, and the last one on 1994. So the first one on 1992 is used for communication from container to container. So we'll have multiple containers spinned up. We use this port to communicate between them. The second one, the controller on 1993, is used only for internal Kafka wrapped communication. So it's not used for any clients. And the last one on 1994, this is what are going to be used to communicate from an external application to the container. So your Python code or anything else that are going to develop. Okay. Anything else that it's important? Maybe this. So those configurations, we're basically saying that we're going to enable the creation of topics when we first produce and consume messages automatically. We do have a replication factor of 1 because we only have a single broker. And we are defining a volume where we're going to persist the broker state across restarts. All right. The next server we're going to spin up is the Kafka UI. So this is basically a web UI service that's going to help us to look into all of the created topics, the messages that are flowing in, schema registry that are going to show. We're going to talk about it later. Everything will be able to check that. So it's defined on port 8080 and it communicates with Kafka on 1992, just like we have defined up there. And also we will communicate with the schema registry. We're going to talk about schema registry later. And just mentioned, we have the schema registry here defined as well on port 8081. Also communicates with Kafka 1992. So we have these three services defined. So once you have this file, go into single broker and run Docker Compose up. I'll use a -d just to not display anything here. And once it says if everything is green, create a starter, you can run Docker ps, and you can see that we do have our three services spinning up: the Kafka UI, the schema registry, and also the Kafka cluster. And that's good. Let's go ahead into our localhost here. Let's try to go into 8080. This is our Kafka UI. So we have the single local. We have all of the brokers, just one broker count, one controller. You can check all of the information here. You have the topics, the consumer offset topics, the schema topics. We have the consumers, and we also have schema registry. So if you also go to localhost 8082, yeah, you should be able to see this request to the page. This is where schema registry is defined, but if you're able to see schema registry here on the Kafka UI, that means that worked. So everything is working well, everything is well connected. Okay, so make sure you have this set, and on the next lecture we're going to talk about the multi-cluster.